Hi there, everybody. Welcome to my wormery. Once again, it is feeding time down here, so I'm bringing you along to keep me company, and there's always that chance that we might see a worm or two. I know that's of interest for a lot of people. We've got some cantaloupe rinds here. The rinds from maybe 3 or 4 melons. It's got a really nice fragrant smell to it. Most of the food that I feed is usually frozen, but this food is completely thawed. It did freeze because I left it out last night, so it's good from that perspective, but it's got a lot more aroma than the food that I usually feed. I think today we're going to go in reverse order. In the past, or in recent times, we've been visiting those bins of mine that are the oldest first. So let's just switch it up a little bit. This time we're going to go ahead and check the newest of these bins. I think this bin is somewhere between 45 and 50 days old at this point. It's been exhibiting some issues by wicking off a lot of its moisture through the cardboard, so the edges are dry. I'm not going to get into that today. We're here to feed. I'm aware of the issue. Using these feeding opportunities to just make sure it's not getting to a really critical point yet. So some of the old food, I think this must have been an apple, but I really can't tell. There's no scent. This looks like banana peels, and they're still quite complete. Not a lot has been consumed yet. I think this is some bedding material. What else have we here? More banana peel. Just going to make a little bit of space down here so we can add some melon rinds. And then we'll cover it up with some of the older food that's already in progress. That'll put the newest food deep down into the feeding zone. Also curious to see how the bottom of this container is holding up. My initial hopes on that were that the bin would soak through and then the worms would just start migrating down into the leaves that are in the plastic bin underneath. But as you can see, the cardboard's holding up way better than I anticipated. It's not soaked at all, it's actually kind of dry. So I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think the worms are going to be able to exit this bin in that fashion. So that's not happening. We have a nice healthy population in here from what I can tell. The numbers seem abundant, especially for a small bin like this. So let's get some food in here so we can let them get back up on the shelf and back to work for us. I've got a feeling that within a week's time there's not going to be much left of this. Alright, let's cover this one up and we'll get the other 2 bins out here and do the same. Well, I guess I would say that despite the dryness, it's still kind of manageable. It's not the end of the world. The worms know enough to avoid the places where they're going to get dried out and dehydrated, so they just stay near the food in the center where there's adequate moisture, and it seems to me like everyone's happy. Let's get the next bin out here. Alright, now this baby's getting pretty heavy now. That's what I like to see. Alright, I like to see this too. I like to see it when the worms are right up on the surface. Because it always feels to me like the material on the very surface gets neglected a little bit, but more recently I've been noticing that the top of surface is getting occupied and consumed quite nicely, so I'm glad to see that as well. You might remember the last feeding was when we converted this bin from a center feeding zone to an edge feeding zone to initiate a sort of a horizontal migration. So the last feeding occurred here and the next feeding will occur here as well. But before we do that, we can maybe just take a quick glance at what the previous feeding zone looks like now that we've kind of stopped feeding here. Just want to see if there's any large significant chunks of food still down here or bedding or anything. The stem of some sort of a plant. half of a mango seed. I had taken frozen mangoes and sawed them in half, so I have a number of half mango seeds in here. I'm just going to poke around in here a little bit just to see if I can spot any other large chunks of food that I can move over into the current feeding zone. That was the original intention last week too. So this is just a quick opportunity to maybe snag a few more pieces that got missed last time. But I think we did a pretty good job because I don't really feel anything else. Why don't we work our way over feeding zone? Make some room for melon. I guess take a peek at how the food that's there from the previous feeding is progressing. What is this? Banana peel. This is some corn. We found all kinds of stuff last time. Here's the apple, still kind of making its way, and look at that, I can still hold it by its stem. Who would have thought? It's getting consumed gradually. More corn. Another half a mango seed. It's just funny that they're not attacking the seed, they're attacking the shell. They're just making their way right into the shell for some reason. So, whatever. Here we've got some of these seedlings that started previously. And I thought burying them would really do them in. And I think they did. I think they did die. I don't see it as if the roots have picked up again. This is where the roots were. Look at this one. This one's already. This one has been consumed already almost. There's nothing in there other than castings and a couple worms hanging out still. But that's really where it goes. Right into their bellies and out the other side. Alright. Chestnut. Alright, I think we've picked enough of the old food out. Let's throw in a couple pieces of melon and get this thing back to work. This is a nice, hefty, generous portion. So let's dump in the old food back where it was. Put this apple in the middle, kind of. Just get this whole thing covered back up. Let them get back to work. Gotta say, this material really has a beautiful texture to it, like a perfect moisture level on its own. This looks great. You can tell there's still tons of worms out throughout the bin. So we'll just have to keep working them to get them to make their way over to the edge. Keep trying to encourage them to do that for us. Last bin. Alright, so if you're a regular on my channel, you will have seen my time lapse of the pumpkin that got put into this bin. I definitely suggest going to check that video out if you haven't seen it yet. The pumpkin was the only food that this bin received. The bin really did sort of get depleted of all the other food that had been in there, as well as a lot of the moisture that was in there. So that's the main reason I've been feeding this bin pretty heavily. In fact, I've even, on occasion, just come down here and fed only this bin in between the normal feedings of the other bins. Here too, we did the same thing in this bin as we did with the other bin. As we set this one up for horizontal migration. The last feeding was the first time we fed on the edge over here. You can already see there's a lot of action over here. I guess before we plop in the new food, why don't we do the same as we did before? Just take a quick look at how the previous feeding zone is progressing. Hopefully they're all making their way over there. I think this actually looks quite nice. Looks like it's where we want it to be. Very nice. Let's just get over into the feeding zone and make some space for the new food. This has an interesting feel to it. As I push up against it, it doesn't feel like the rest of the material in the bin. It feels like I'm, sloshing a pile of meat around. It's obvious why it feels that way, because that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm slushing around a huge mound of squirmy worms. I'll do the same here. As I'm just going to pick out some of these larger chunks so I can drop in the new food on the bottom, and then I'll pile the in-progress food on top of that. So here we have banana peels. If you watch the last feeding video, you'll see banana peels were the main course in that feeding. I'm getting spoiled, these worms. They're getting all kinds of delicious, sweet, sugary foods. That'll be an interesting test to see how providing one bin with all vegetable and fruit matter, and then maybe feed another similarly equipped bin with an abundance of kind of like starchy stuff, maybe more fattening stuff like rice and wheat and things like that, just to see if we end up with fatter, thicker worms. I'd be curious. I think I saw somewhere that that's what the people who raise worms for the purposes of selling them to fishermen as bait. I believe that that's one of the techniques to fatten them up, you know, in preparation for market. Start feeding them with lots of grains for the last month or so, and then they really blow it up and get fat. To try that one of these days. All these worms. I guess we're going to use this as an opportunity again to sort of concentrate the feeding zone to be at the very, very edge of the bin. At this point, this mass of worms is kind of, you know, littered with various chunks of food, but nothing too big. We took all the largest stuff out. Maybe, you know, I'm not going to bother with it now, but maybe next time I feed, it would be a worthwhile thing to throw in a little bit of additional bedding here. Got a lot of nitrogen content with all this food scraps, but you know, the carbon supply might be dwindling at this point. That looks great. Let's get the last of this food in there. Excellent. Simple as that. This stuff would go a lot quicker actually if I wasn't, you know, always poking around and probing around and examining everything and checking it all out. But, you know, if I stopped doing all that, where would the fun be, right? Try to level this whole baby off, and we're done. Here too, the moisture level is perfect. The material feels terrific. All right, we'll go back to work in the pumpkin bins feeding zone with the pumpkin stem and the traditional coffee filter. And that'll be it for today. The two sister bins, I guess as long as we're still putting things away here, the two sister bins are right behind me. They're still in the process of trying to get their populations consolidated into their feeding zones. There's been no feeding on those for a number of weeks. So I'm not even going to mess with them today. I'm just going to let them sit and kind of run out on their own. And you know, maybe the next time I'll check in on them, see how they're coming along. So, all right, everyone, that's it for today. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate your company. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. I always appreciate that. And by all means, subscribe to my channel if you like stuff like this, so you get notified of the next time I post new material. And make sure you hit the bell too, otherwise those notifications don't come through automatically. All right, everyone, thanks for your time. Take care and have a great day. Bye now.